NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week, with the Law Commission having recently announced the abolition for death penalty, we are here to discuss the merits of capital punishment, whether there should be death penalty or not. For this, I have a very distinguished panel. I have with me Sabah Naqvi, political editor of The Outlook. I have Mr. Prashant Bhushan, senior advocate. Kiran Bedi, Delhi's top cop and also former IG of Tihar Jail. I have Mr. KTS Tulsi, another senior advocate. Mr. Bedi, I'll begin with you first. What are your views on the Law Commission's recommendations? Is death penalty a deterrent or should it be abolished?
I've looked at the media reports on the Law Commission. They are also not unanimous in this. You've had Miss Justice Usha Mehra and the Law Secretary, the other Secretary. Three of them are not agreeing with it. I would tend to say we could keep it as the rarest of the rare, because in the rarest of the rare you have a sword hanging, but you may never use it or use it very, 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 very judiciously, as I said, because every aspect needs to have a deterrence effect. Every law must keep its deterrence effect. Just as you need to respect the law, you need to fear the law. And I think that's the ultimate. And I would not I would not approach it in a way saying the following countries have abolished it or not. I'm trying to look at the situation and crime situation, particularly terrorist acts within my own country. And I would say, well, if they create an act against the sovereignty, integrity and large peace disturbance of this country, within this country, they come to kill, particularly the terrorist acts or gang rapes, two areas, I would say that we must keep it as the rarest of the rare. Though I believe in reform aspect prior to that, but when it comes to gang rape and terrorist acts, I would like to see it retained.
Mr. Bhushan, what is your view on this?
The Law Commission has said that for that category which is called rarest of rare, it is not really a deterrent. It is not any more of a deterrent than life imprisonment. Because today the rarest of rare would mean hardened terrorists, hardened gang rapists, etc. By and large, they are not afraid being put to death. And the other thing that the Law Commission says is that it is applied in a very arbitrary manner. So there are different judges having different viewpoints on this, and some of them apply it quite liberally, some of them apply it hardly ever apply it. And that's unfortunately what happens with mercy petitions as well. There are those presidents who virtually grant all mercy petitions. There are those who don't grant any mercy petitions. Depends upon the government which is in place. But to my mind, the strongest argument against death penalty is that since it is a kind of state-sponsored violence, it encourages or it creates a lynch mob mentality in society, just as in those societies where you have stoning to death. It creates a kind of mindset or a culture of this kind of barbaric violence. Similarly, death penalty, being a state-sponsored act of extreme violence, it also promotes this kind of lynch mob mentality or this cry for bloodlust as it is called. So to my mind, that's the strongest argument against the death penalty, and that is why most civilized countries have abolished it.
Sabah, you know, here the Law Commission has said in cases of terrorism, it should not be, it should be applied. Do you think that's okay?
Look at the recent track record on cases of terrorism. Let us not forget the shameful manner in which the Kashmiri Afzal Guru was hanged without the due process being followed. When we are taking away the life of someone. Now, even people with what is this idea of society taking revenge in any religion, in any philosophical approach, when you're snuffing out a life, you have to be so sure. And Priya, I'll share this with you very openly. I'm not advocating anything here, but top minister of the Congress regime told me, if you recall, it was Mr. Shinde who was the Home Minister at that time when this was done in secrecy, without informing his family, in a very, very shameful manner. he said that people had told him that there was not, it was not even sure. Mr. Afzal Guru had fallen in the crosshairs of intelligence agencies and all of this, and still he was hanged in a shameful manner by the Indian state. And a whole state, the people of Kashmir are convinced that it was unjust what was done to it, as are many people sitting here in Delhi. I'm convinced it was.
The hanging was unjust, the manner in which it was done.
Even the hanging. I mean, if there was any doubt, you give a life sentence to someone. Now, in Yaqub Memon's case, he was clearly involved in a family where terrorism was there. But since he had come back to India, how do we not open up the little room for compassion? When we hang someone, it's all finished and people get affected. And let me also bring your attention to what is this idea of rarest and rare in terrorism. What has happened to the Dara Singh who killed the missionary and his sons in a very, very brutal manner? He was given the death sentence, but if I'm not wrong, and Prashant may know the answer to this, the judge said something about that conversion was not the right way to do it, and it was commuted to life. So even our definitions of terrorism,
we need to go into that.
Are we going by a stereotype? Do we think, no, people were not so upset when Ajmal Kasab was hanged, even though I'm against the death penalty, but there have been these, the manner in which the state has done it, and this has got nothing to do with regime. We are talking Congress here, and one has happened under the BJP. This was a process that has happened, and so I think at any level of humanity, at any level of philosophy, at any level of justice, human justice, it's completely wrong, and the rarest of rare is really holding us open to prejudice in our society, to stereotyping in our society. What do we mean when we say only terrorists can be hanged? And by the way, if we are living by the stereotype of terrorists, they don't care if they live or die in any case. In that case, if we are doing that. So this is hardly going to be a deterrent. It is only a way for certain judges who believe in that and for appeasing the collective conscience of society. I think these were the words used in the case of Afzal Guru. And, so our recent record is shocking. So, this
she's
is
raised some very pertinent points, Mr. Tulsi. Do you agree with what she's saying, that even within the cases of terrorism, we need to differentiate?
No, I don't agree either with the Law Commission or with the views being expressed. I feel that India has already acquired a perfect balance between having death sentence on the statute and yet never overusing it. Our record after independence from 1950 to now is 57 executions. That's less than one a year. And rarest or rare theory has worked. We will always be open to criticism because no human institution can ever be perfect. There will be different viewpoints, it's a free country. But let us remember, it's not a question that the person who is being executed, what does it do to him? It's the rest of the society to whom the message needs to go, that there is death sentence on the statute. Human beings love their life dearly, so dearly. And the most horrible thing for anyone is the prospect of being put to death. And here, prospect of being put to death by a judicial process, it's a huge deterrent to large number of people from committing crimes of that nature. It's to them, for them, that this message goes. And if you see the rest of the world, countries which have abolished have very small populations and very high degree of education. It's a different set of crimes that are committed in those countries. There are many offences for which there is no other appropriate punishment than execution. It's that which prevents large number of people from committing many other horrible crimes which would otherwise occur. I think that we should reform the system further. We can actually, the Law Commission had also in its earlier report recommended that there should be a bench of at least 5 judges who should hear
the capital punishment.
The capital punishment cases.
Okay.
And I agree with that. There should be 5 judges. In fact, this recommendation was sent to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has been examining it. for the last, I think, over about 7 or 8 years. The second recommendation that was made was that unless there is unanimity amongst 5 judges, death sentence will not be granted.
All right.
Now, this takes out to a great extent subjective element amongst the judges.
Which is what we were worried about.
And these reforms, to my mind, will serve the purpose of reducing subjectivity and the possibility of an error. Although the possibility can never be ruled out, there will be people who will still criticize.
But that is the problem.
I have read this in media reports, and I could be wrong, that the Law Commission, the current on which this debate is, has actually said that there is no evidence that capital punishment is a deterrence. So what are we talking about?
But there is no evidence that it is not a deterrent either.
That is what I have read in the media
reports. We don't have scientific research.
The Law Commission has said that in his report, but he's saying also that it's, usually in developed countries with smaller population where it works, but in countries like India, China, Indonesia.
I mean, anybody who's committing such a heinous crime as we are talking,
why don't we have research on India? We can have a research. There should be institutions which should conduct this
research which has been done and which is being done even in India. This Professor Surendranath, who is in charge of the death penalty project in this law university, National Law University, has been doing research precisely on this. And his research also shows that there is no evidence whatsoever to support the case that death penalty acts as a deterrent against the persons to whom it is supposed to be applied to, that is rarest of rare, terrorists, etc. See, today most terrorists are of the kind who have come prepared to die. They are persons, many of them are suicide terrorists. Many others who come like Ajmal Kasab, etc., they knew that they would be eventually caught and they would be killed. So therefore, these are not persons who are going to be deterred by the death penalty. But some people could be deterred, but they are not the people to whom death penalty
will be deterred. That's what I'm saying. Not all can be deterred.
But some can be.
They are not the persons to whom death penalty is supposed to be
your work in the prisons. Is this deterrent enough? You've seen people who are in jail who are serving life sentences. Will this hanging is a bigger deterrent than a life sentence?
I've seen this. It is a deterrent, and as Mr. Tulsi rightly said, I've seen prisoners on the death row wanting to live, wanting to survive, even if it means living the rest of their life in the prison. They want to live. This is their plea. In fact, they were asking us to plead for them. I remember there were petitions being written by people from inside. Somebody had come killing all his daughters, and now he wanted to live. And I remember we did plead from inside the prison, because this was something like he dinging with his daughters out of poverty or something. He was at the death row. Believe me, we sent petitions from inside the prison. The death was commuted. So people want to live. And there is an element of deterrence. But secondly, let me look at it from the other side. There's something called victims. Victims in this country. While we are looking at the rights of the accused substantially, what about the rights of the victims? Victims are the ones which are defended by the state. Accused are defended mostly by hired defense counsels too, and the victims are defended by prosecutors of different qualities, right? So they're entirely dependent on the states for their rights.
Right.
So when you keep the death penalty on in the rarest of the rare, with due diligence, with due process, it's not sudden that isne ye kiya, hatch it. It's a very laborious due process. And today, getting a conviction out of a court is no ordinary, it's an extraordinary situation. So, and that too, getting a death penalty and then again getting it commuted, I think it's hitting into the rights of the victims as well. So whenever we talk of justice, I think we must always strike a balance between rights of the accused and the rights of the victims. And victims' rights are the rights of the society.
Right.
No, I just want to say one thing, that when we are talking about, since the Law Commission has recommended that terrorism is the exception, the laws under which TADA and POTA and the various laws which are there, and I'm sure Prashant would be able to cite them off, but the laws are also where a case can easily be constructed by agencies, and there have been many people who've landed up in jail for years who were completely innocent. So in terrorism cases, so I want to repeat that. We don't like to hear it, but it's been a fact. What happened with Makkah Masjid, I'm not doing propaganda here, people were falsely arrested, and if the laws can be so draconian in the matter of terrorism cases, then surely there's a chance that a wrong person can, once a whole case is built up against him.
No, apart from the fact that there are very often wrong persons who are convicted and sent to death row, and therefore the argument that people in death row want to live is not an argument which suggests that it's a deterrent, because they could be the wrong people. They are not the people who have committed those very heinous crimes who have been wrongly convicted.
But
in
everybody
the US,
would want to live by as a thumb rule, except for those terrorists, as you said, are really committed to martyrdom.
Yeah. But those are the persons to whom the rarest of rare case applies. It doesn't apply. For example, under Tada or Pota, mere being involved in a conspiracy of terrorism cannot give you death sentence. Unfortunately, in both these cases of that Afzal Guru as well as this Yaqub, they were only convicted of involvement in a conspiracy. They were not guilty of killing anybody themselves or being involved in any violent act themselves. And this argument that, look, what about the rights of the victims? Criminal justice is not about retribution. Criminal justice is about either prevention, you keep him in jail so that he doesn't commit any further offense, or you deter him or other people from committing such offenses in future.
Right.
The rights of victims are not for the purpose of retribution against such persons. That's not the principle of criminal jurisprudence.
He was going to disagree with you.
I was the lawyer for the Union of India in the case in which the constitutional validity of Tada was challenged. And in Kartar Singh, a constitution bench of 5 judges presided over by Justice Pandian has held that it is duty of the courts to strike a balance between the rights of the accused and the rights of the victims. In Ophar, the victims feel cheated because they think that justice has not been done. Victims are also entitled to justice as much as the accused is entitled to justice. We can't have excessive consideration for the rights of the accused and no consideration for the right of victim.
Ma'am, the rights of the victim, the argument that he is saying, would you like to elaborate?
Exactly, I'll again strengthen this, because it's not retribution. To my mind, when you are observing rights of the victim, you are promoting justice. It's a justice, it's again a balance, because this, you can treat it as retribution. I look at it as justice, because this is justice delivered. Usne ye tumhari jaan li, uska right tha due process of law. He's gone through whole due process of law. Every bit of evidence has been fully examined. After examination and due process, the judges in their wisdom have come that this is justice. This is a message of justice, not retribution. This is a message. Now, if it was retribution, then it would have been stoning, something like that. You would have had stoning, right? The kind of, that is promoting violence. A lot of laughter, you stone. This is not stoning. This is quietly, invisibly gone. The point is, I think I would probably replace the word retribution to justice in society.
Yeah,
due process has been followed.
This country was founded, what were the ideals on which India was founded? Was it not Mahatma Gandhi who said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind? Do we forget our values in this idea of what kind of justice is this when we are doing something against any philosophical, any religious tradition? I've got tired of hearing this phrase over whenever these debates come up about majesty of the law. I think there are humanitarian principles at the core of our society, and I believe in those. I don't believe that in this idea we have to go back to the principles on which this country was founded, though a lot of it appears to be obscured at times. And it was Gandhi who said that. Yeah.
Well, don't go away. We need to take a short break, but do come back. As you can see, this is a very interesting discussion. Welcome back. Here we are debating the pros and cons of capital punishment. Mr. Bhushan, some people also say not just the nature of the crime, but the nature of the criminal, the mitigating circumstances versus the aggravating circumstances.
My understanding of criminal jurisprudence is not that the object of punishment is retribution or this, what is justice to the victim? I mean, you may couch it in any way, but it really means retribution. The object of criminal justice and criminal jurisprudence is basically, as I said, prevention, and secondly, deterrence.
Right.
Now, if the death penalty does not significantly deter people to whom this penalty is to be given, it may deter others to whom it is not supposed to be given. The fact that there are people in death row who want to live is likely to mean that they are not the kind of persons who deserve the death penalty. They are not the rarest of rare cases. They are not hardened terrorists. They are people to whom who are in death row perhaps unjustly. So therefore, you have to promote humaneness in a society, and that's what that's the march of civilization. Virtually all civilized countries, the only countries, major countries where death penalty survives are the US, China and India. Other than that, virtually every country in Europe has abolished the death penalty. Most other countries have also abolished it. Unfortunately, we are still continuing. I think the time has come to review the judgment of the Supreme Court in Bachchan Singh, where they held death penalty to be constitutional, but said rarest of rare. I think the time has come to declare it to be unconstitutional.
Mr. Tulsi is not agreeing that the time has come.
No, I agree with Prashant that we should be humane. The society should be humane. And for preserving the humanity, inhuman actions need to be looked down upon. I agree with the rarest or rare. I think Bachchan Singh is rightly decided. And I believe that it is that principle which has brought humane jurisprudence in action.
Okay, last word from you, ma'am, finally.
The last thing I'd like to contribute from the prison angle is that if somebody is on a death row, there has to be a time limit. It cannot be endless.
Yes. That
he is on a death row for next 10 years or 8 years or even 5 years and then hung. I think that is unfair, because what he's gone through these next 4 or 5 years, there's no deterrence, because even the victim has forgotten. He's moved, so there is no deterrence. This is now almost amounting to injustice, because next 4 or 5 years, supposing he's a changed man, he's gone through a reform process, he's gone through humanity, he's gone through because there are some institutions which are offering human processes, right? He's gone through, and now being hung. I think is little unfair. So I would say, as courts have been saying, and I believe one particular Bombay High Court did stay a particular execution or a death penalty because it was delayed in mercy petition to be decided. We should say within a year. So anybody is on particularly gang rapes and terrorists, you need to set a deadline, year or 2 years.
Otherwise it becomes cruel and inhuman.
Cruel and inhuman. I think I would say, let's have a deadline. That's the real thing. For deterrence and keeping the balance between humanity and justice.
That's a good note to end on. I'm afraid we run out of time, but we'll see you again, same time next week.